It's just incredible what you actually can do with the right help and with the right perspective. What would you want to tell anybody out there?
But they're not alone.
I love that. Yep.
Nobody deserves to be alone.
Mm.
No matter what you were told, you were born with worth that can never be taken away.
Hey, guys, it is Alison. I am the host of your show, Alison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey guys, how are you today? I have a very interesting guest that I think you will really enjoy. She is really a master at the kind of work that I do. So I'm going to read for you this wonderful woman's biography. Dr. Mahsa completed her bachelor's in psychology and master's in social work at UCLA. She completed her PhD in clinical social work with an emphasis on psychodynamic treatment in 2016. She has over 12 years of experience in the field of mental health. What really stands out to me is that she has the insight and the wisdom to deal with populations that have been very difficult. She's worked in all different types of facilities, a correctional facility. She worked in the Twin Towers. She's worked in jails, Men's Central Detention Center, working with incarcerated men and women. She also worked at a mental health clinic working with more severely mentally disabled people, and those being significantly affected by their mental illnesses, including schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, etc. In addition to working with individuals, couples, families, and children affected by trauma, relationship issues, immigration, and severe mental health. She's experienced in working with addiction and those affected by addiction. She has worked at an outpatient drug and alcohol program and gains much insightful information. She's also a clinical trauma professional. Dr. Mahsa's treatment modality is a combination of different cutting-edge treatments for depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and trauma. She uses the psychodynamic approach in treatment, where the goal of treatment is to identify, grieve, and heal the root causes of all the symptoms. She's right up my alley, this woman. She uses cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, attachment, and other modalities to provide her clients with tools to manage their symptoms. Together, they embark on the journey of self-discovery, healing, and thriving. The reason that I have chosen this woman to be on this show primarily is that she really seems to be in line with the movement, the mission of my soul. And that mission is to be completely not put people in a box, not have people labeled in a mental disorder where they can never climb out of. I believe that anyone can thrive. I believe that anyone can create the dreams that they want. Her work going into the inner child, the programming, if you will, of all the things that we end up working on doing, and all of our outcomes are based in these belief systems and the programming that began during that period of time. So I'm really fascinated to work with and have her share with you ways that you can transform and change the future, change the trajectory of your life just by making little subtle shifts, which I have done so many times and I continue to do. When I notice some sort of faulty behavior in myself, what I do is I look at where did this feeling, thought, core belief originate? And then what I do is I then ask myself wise questions. More on that on my next podcast that'll be solo. All right, without any further ado, here she comes. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Alison from Alison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. I have the coolest guest. And what I want to just say about her, I already gave the bio to you guys, but what I really want you to know about this woman is this. before pre-recording, I discovered that we share this mission. And I love how this works. When I have a guest on the podcast, somehow, some way, it aligns right with both of what we're doing. And I just feel like it's just so cool to have that experience. So what I want to share with you guys know that I'm on Mission Awake. I want to awaken the world to the systems that we're following, these antiquated mental health systems, public school systems, medical systems, and showcase people who are doing cutting edge shit in a different way to help you to thrive in your life. This woman right here, coupled with her husband and other coaches, which she'll tell you about them, they are doing the same thing in California on the other side of the country that we're doing here in New York, where we don't believe in boxing someone into their symptoms. The symptoms are the thing that we work through simply and help them to no longer be symptomatic. Then we step on the gas and help them achieve their dreams. This beautiful woman has this incredible same mission, which we didn't know one another. And I just love how God, the universe, or whatever you believe in, is raising the consciousness of our world to be enlightened to we don't have to be mediocre anymore. We can live out our dreams. So without any further ado, I'm going to let this beautiful woman share, and I'm going to ask her a lot of questions. And I butchered her name in the bio. So her name, I'm calling her Dr. Mahsa. Is that correct?
Yes.
So thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Would you just tell us about your counseling center or whatever you call it? Just give us a little background.
Thank you. Thank you, Alison, for having me. And hello to your listeners and viewers. Thank you for listening to me. It's such an honor to be here. And like you said, I'm so appreciative that I found someone just like me, right? That thinks and wants the same mission in the world, which is really bettering and thriving in the world that we live in as people and really achieving the dreams we have because we all deserve it. But yeah, so Heal and Thrive Psychotherapy and Coaching was born in 2007 when my daughter was born, and was taken over by my husband, Ruz, who is our ADHD coach, in 2008. And the man just transformed the business, let me tell you. He and I have created this business in the really, our mission is to help people become the best versions of themselves. And I don't mean it as cliche. I really mean it as getting past the things that are holding us back based on our experiences, the ways in which we get in our own ways, and we don't believe in ourselves, or, the struggles that we went through that triggers us, holds us back, makes us scared, makes us fearful, that really doesn't allow us to get to know our full potential. Yeah. And in this work, what we believe in is that if you help someone heal from the past and really understand what happened, grieve what they couldn't grieve, feel what they couldn't feel, and have a new understanding of their experiences, they're open to unlimited potential. And that's where Ruse come in to really help them achieve those goals. Right? I provide the insights and get them to understand what happened and heal them from that child they once were to the person they are today. And Ruse takes them to that next step of the journey of really transforming their lives to whatever they dream of. And the most interesting thing is that they're capable of things none of us would ever imagine. I mean, the amount of growth that we see in these people. I mean, when they leave, right? They always, text us back and it's like, I had this problem. This is what I faced. I thought of you, but then I remembered I can handle it. I handled it beautifully. I'm just letting you know. And it's
Love it.
Such a wonderful feeling to know you changed lives.
Yes, it really, really is. And the message I think for that you and I are both trying to get to anyone who's listening is that we truly can have the life that we want. We really can. And could you tell us how, because in reading your stuff, I just love it because this is what we do, how we're programmed from the time we're so young, and you do psychodynamic work. Could you just explain to us how you would help someone with patterns today? Let's say, we hear this forever, negative relationship patterns over and over again. It's just a different cast of characters with the main character being ourselves. How do you help someone work through their inner child work in order to break free of that? And, whatever way you do that, I'm interested in hearing. I want others to hear that.
Is it okay if I tell you a little bit about how I see inner child? Because
yes, of course.
Thank you. So being psychodynamic is this idea that who you are is really an accumulation of experiences that you have had growing up, and how each of those environments, experiences, and dynamics you went through impacts how you see the world, what we call internal working model, right? Our relationship to the world, our perception of the world, our way of seeing ourselves in the world. And so in order to change that internal working model, what you need is a corrective emotional experience. The idea that the therapy becomes the first step in undoing, grieving, changing, and learning, having this new relationship that is different than the patterns you have had. And this healing relationship allows you to then extend it to every other area, where you don't necessarily need the therapist anymore, because the therapist now has an internal representation in your mind that gets extended and allows others to fulfill that same role, right? This new relationship is starting to develop with others. And that's where the thriving comes. So the idea of inner child, the way I define it, is if you go back all the way to, I know a lot of Freud's ideas are pushed away, but I think at some point, if we think about it, there was some foundational ideas. When we think about id, ego, and superego, right? Think of id as our animalistic urges, our aggressive urges, our pleasure-seeking urges, or what I would call childlike urges, right? Very childlike, very innocent in some ways, but sometimes not most appropriate. And superego as a representation of our morals, values, consciousness, but also judgment, criticism, the people who have been in that position of authority and importance, and the messages they sent. A lot of times when you have had trauma, when you have had difficult life experiences, when you have just been through life in general, right? We're imperfect, so we're gonna be imperfect in our parenting. What happens is that these two pieces sometimes get in conflict. So you have this representation of critical people in your mind. You can't do this, you're not good enough, you shouldn't do this. And this childlike tendency that shows up out of nowhere. Maybe that rage that shows up when you get frustrated with your husband and just like letting it out. And you're like, why did I do that exactly? What we want to do is to increase or support the ego, observing ego, or in another world, the adult, right? The referee, the balancing act. We want to get the person to create this adult in themselves that can negotiate between the child's needs and the expectations. To soften the superego, to soften the parent, what I call the parent in the situation, negotiate and say, okay, this thing you're asking, is it appropriate here or not? And to validate, support, and care about the child. When we think about the inner child, it's really the child in different moments of your life that the mind was unable to process or make sense of. So the person gets stuck in that moment. So the inner child work is in essence for me as the borrowed observing ego, as the borrowed adult, to show up and teach the person how to attend to the child they once were, to understand the situation from a different perspective after they have grieved, screamed, yelled, felt whatever they needed to feel and they didn't get to. And then understand why things happened the way they did from an adult perspective. And in essence, calm that wound. Mm-hmm. The next time the person gets triggered, they will recall, oh, I know what this is about. We're okay. I got your back. This is not the same. I'm not going to let that happen to you again. Mm-hmm. And it's handling the situation from that adult point of view.
It's incredible to me. I'm sure you have experience. I love the way that you presented all of that, because it's fantastic the way you shared it, because it's very easy to understand. And what's interesting to me, and I'm curious to know what you think of it, it's kind of like a little trail off of it. This is what my brain did with it, because, being in this field for so long, it's interesting how you can see this work, then you can see it neurologically, right? Mm-hmm. And then you could see over the years how it was discussed, right, in these different ways. But it's this kind of incredible, it's like this full, how would I explain? It's like this deep way of transforming someone's life. And it's very, very simple. And like what I'm thinking that I say a lot, because I used to do a lot of this inner child work, right? And then in studying neuroscience and brain waves and quantum physics, like all of that stuff, it makes me crazy. I love it that like from 0 to 7, we're in that theta brainwave, right? It's like that hypnotic state, which is so necessary, right? For us to be programmed to read, write, whatever, walk, all the things that are necessary, but we're being programmed in all these different ways. And then I'm thinking about like the idea of like an emotion, because I would say like there's like one part of me, I remember one part of me that was just always crying 4 years old, buried alive, always crying, 4 years old. So something that could trigger that or resonate with that painful part, that little moment in time, that if it was addressed, right? And that's what you're talking about, like go back to her and transform that experience, right?
To show up for her so she's no longer alone.
Yes.
Crying a lot is asking for help, is begging for help. Mm-hmm. As long as she is alone, you will feel that aloneness in the most vulnerable ways. Yes. You could be at the most successful point in your career. Yeah. And you will still feel that desperation and pain. Yeah. She is still back there attached to you. Yes. But if you show up for her in a way that nobody did, and attend to her and care for her, and whether think of it as like changing the memory, right? Yes. Take her out. Yes. Or comfort her or help her understand, because the child's brain is limited, right? It's very egocentric. It's very much all about me. Yeah. So when we think about, okay, the child couldn't have seen it in any other way. Yeah. We show up and say, okay, I get it and I appreciate it and I value it. And you're right, this is really hard. But let me help you understand what happened to this person that did it, that wasn't there for you. But I tend to go generations back and try to figure out what was going on with those people. It allows the child to then feel like, okay, this wasn't about me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the one who was abandoned. Mm-hmm. It was the people who were around me who couldn't bury the pain or take or, carry it as a burden. The pain they were going through. Mm-hmm. And it was their inability that made me suffer. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't mine. Does that make sense? Makes a lot of sense. What I'm thinking when you're saying it is like, how if you're triggered by something, I think about like when there's two adults, let's say a married couple, and they're screaming at one another, right? Like there's no adult in the room, at that moment.
It's really all whatever that is, fear. And I'm just curious about your way of seeing this, because it's just different language. It's just interesting to me. I love different perceptions. So like when we have an experience in our childhood, right? Whatever it is, whether it's a traumatic experience, which I know you have a lot of experience with trauma. So if it's a traumatic experience, I have actually two questions. If it's traumatic experience, right? Now, if we were to feel the real feeling related to that experience, or even if it's not a traumatic experience, whatever it is, just a thing that we've interpreted from a child's mind, but we can't, because of the environment we're in, we cannot feel it the way is natural. So we split off, right? Is that how you see it? That we split off from that part of ourselves, leaving ourselves abandoned in that state, let's say crying, or right? Is that the way you would also explain it?
Yes. Can I expand?
Oh, yes. I want you. That's my point. I'm like, yeah, go.
Think about it. There's neurobiology explanation of this. There's psychodynamic explanation of it. There's like cutting edge brain mapping explanation of it. But at the end of the day, they all say the same thing. Mm-hmm. That we are programmed to survive. In order to survive, we have to be able to use what is called defense mechanisms to be able to somehow, intact as much as possible, get through those unbearable, helpless, hopeless moments. So there's a range of different things that happens, right? This could be splitting, denial, dissociation. Those are trauma words. Or in the words of Janina Fisher, she talks about these 4 different, mechanisms that we have. I forgot exactly what she called them, which is like, goes back to fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. The idea of what can I do in that moment to survive this? So the mind is a combination of the brain and the whole system. It's a very full-on response to survival. The mind evaluates the situation and its survivability. And depending on the level of disintegration, like the level of how much is this thing causing it to fall apart, it comes up with a response that is potentially helpful in that situation. So whether the person starts to blame themselves, because if I blame myself for this abuse, then if I am good enough, this won't happen to me, right? Or if it is that this is so unbearable, I cannot take this, I'm just going to focus on that piece of curtain and the way the wind is moving it. So I'm not here. And my body is experiencing the trauma, but I'm not experiencing it, which in essence is just getting stored in a different place in a different way. It's an emotional, physical response. Or is it that I'm going to fight back, right? However, or am I going to just accept it and agree with it and repeat the pattern because that's what makes sense? The mind does what it can with that situation in order to survive it. And the response depends on the situation and the person's experiences in that moment and the capacity to tolerate. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Sometimes I wonder, because this stuff makes sense to me, and I wonder, like, because I'll talk about it, I'm like, well, does it make, because we're like used to talking like this. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, does it make sense to other people? To me, it makes complete sense, 100%. So I have a question for you. It's related to all this, because I know you've done, you've worked a lot in the systems, right? And we both so much want to change the systems across the world, right? And just have people see that happiness is not a damn sin, for God's sakes. So, yeah. So I'm just wondering, your experience in prisons and in the different places that you've been, have you seen the difficulty in those kind of antiquated systems to help people break out and thrive? Has that been something that you've struggled with, or how did you overcome it if you were able to?
Let me tell you that I'm here for that reason, right? I started my career in children and family services. And I want to tell some stories if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, please do.
So the idea is that some kid is being abused. You remove the child from the house. This is what I was told I needed to do. Then you go in and check in on the child to make sure the child is fine. And you tell the parents what they need to do. And if they do it, you give the child back. If you don't, you don't. And at the end of the day, your responsibility is to protect this child.
You know that I did the same thing in the beginning of my career.
Okay.
I cannot even believe you're saying this. So I know maybe we didn't have to say it on the podcast, but I'm like, what? You're speaking my heart, the agony of doing that work. Okay, I'm just going to be quiet. I just had to tell you that.
This is funny.
Wow. Yeah.
I have to tell you that in that experience, I couldn't do it. I think in my whole career, I was there for 3 years. I removed 2 children who didn't return to their parents. And every single one of the other families that I've worked with, they all returned and they all thrived. Because I had a very different philosophy. I didn't accept that philosophy. I was interested in, okay, there's a parent who's doing something that is wrong. What is happening with that parent?
Yes.
The parent doing that thing. And my interest wasn't for this parent to go to the classes. My interest was, what is my job to help you understand what is happening to you?
Yes.
It is causing you to act this way, and what do we need to change?
Yep.
So my clients were not actually the children. I think I spent the least amount of time with the kids. I would see them, we would talk, how are you doing? What do you need? So on and so forth. But then I would move on to the parents.
It's the only way.
And our work was to, in essence, undo the generational transmission of trauma that they had gone through. And the funniest thing was, like, years later, I was working with a client in county mental health. Had a case. I called the CFS, and one of my clients picked up the phone. And she's like, "Oh my God, is that you?" I'm like, "Yes, what's going on? How are you?" And she's like, "My life has been great." She continued, went to college, she got her degree, started working at the CFS. She's like, "I want to give everybody what you gave me."
Ah, that's it.
Like, full circle, right?
Yes.
Same thing with the jail, right? Working at the jail, people were treated like animals.
Yeah.
And the deputies, some of them, not all of them, would get so mad at me because I would just go walk through the halls and, people were working and we would sit there and we would talk for hours. And they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm having the most interesting conversation with this person. They're like, "No, it's dangerous. You can't be alone with them." And let me tell you, they were the ones who protected me all
I believe that. Yep.
The most interesting conversations happened with those gentlemen. Because we were talking, they were very entrepreneur mindset, very smart, very resourceful, but in the worst kind of environments. And so our conversation always would lead into how they were responding to their environment and how they were setting themselves up to fail.
Yeah. That's cool.
The system wanted me to hand them a piece of paper and tell them, "Okay, go to this place, get services, and you're done." Well, if people know about the reincarceration rate, the moment you leave, you're not set up to succeed.
No, not at all. No.
How do you undo all of those systems that have no interest to help you? You leave, you can't get a job, you can't get housing. Your family throws up a party for you because you got out of jail as if it is an accomplishment. Then everybody who knows you comes back and says, "Come and join me. You did your time. Now you have more power.
Let's have pizza.
Let's have pizza. Let's do a couple of beers." It's like, what? I mean, I've been working on this.
Exactly.
And it's like this one voice that I was bringing in versus all these years and all these influences. What is that one paper, that one therapist, that one place? How are you supposed to get to that place when you got out 12 o'clock at midnight and the only person you had to pick you up was your homie?
Exactly.
Same thing with severe mental illness. In my private practice, I have a client who had a schizoaffective disorder. So we're talking about voices, delusions, significant paranoia, the whole thing, right? She is going to school, she's working, she's thriving, she's moving on with her life. That's what the difference is, right?
Yes.
People are capable of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was working in the county, the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
People were said, well, these are people who are mentally ill. They have severe mental illness. They have severe symptoms. They're gonna, if you keep them alive and you keep them stable enough, maybe they're able to keep their housings. That's good enough. And then we're gonna give you 100 of those cases.
Right. Exactly.
Babysit them, check in with them once in a while.
Yep.
What is that? Right? What am I supposed to do with that? If I, the therapist, don't believe there's something more for them, how can they?
Exactly. I love that.
I
love what you just said. If I, as a therapist, do not believe that there is more for them, how can they? I love that. Because I tell the therapists who work here, I just sat down with all of them. I said, you have to understand when you sit down, you don't see what they're presenting. You see where they can go. What forecast for them, like in your mind, see them, and know that like when we sit with a person, Doc, when we sit with a person, we are sitting with generations.
Yes, we are.
That's like the power, like, and that when we just give them a paper and tell them you're not going to succeed, good luck. We're also treating the generations to come and magnifying it. So I do believe that, each one of us who can, one person at a time, we're helping generations of people, right? So how did you in the system, when you were in those systems, because I understand that. I remember I used to work in a locked adolescent psychiatric hospital, and like, they would like get ready, like, like rush the staff with like a mattress and like beat the crap out of like the staff. And I was never afraid, because I would tell the staff at like these meetings, I'd go, they just don't like you. I'm like, they're not going to hurt me. I'm like, just be nice to them. Like, that's your safety plan, right? It's incredible. And, that may sound naive, but it's actually true. People don't want to hurt people who love them and care about them.
They don't.
Yes. So anyhow, tell us what you do, like, that's different in a system, or, it could just be with one person, which I know what you do, but just tell us more.
So I went against the system. I went against the grain. I went after what I believe. And of course, there was a lot of pushback. That's why I had to leave. But I would choose a specific set of people that I would see them every week instead of like every month, every other month. And I would do what I do now with them.
I love it.
At some point, it gets too painful to watch that you have to choose people over people.
Yeah.
And so when I had my child, she really was the reason I left, because she was 2 months old and they're like, you have to come back. And I'm like, I had infertility. So I'm like, I killed myself having this child. I'm not about to leave her.
Yes.
And I went into private practice, and that's where the changes started. I started to see people who were well enough.
Yeah.
Had experiences that had allowed them to get to where they needed to get in life. But I saw the same patterns. I saw the same wounded childs inside. I saw the same pain and suffering, the same self-doubt, the same persona of all they were and what they really felt inside.
Yes.
That's where our work has started. Because I would see people who were like, I've been to therapy. I've got to a point that I have the skills, so what? And I said, well, that's not what you need.
Yeah.
You need to heal. You need to figure out what is the cause of the symptoms. I'm not treating the flu. I'm going after the bacteria. I'm going after the virus.
Yes.
I want to know what is happening within you.
Yes.
If we solve that, it's like unlimited options.
So true. You know what drives me crazy? And I see it, when I'll take, we hire therapists, whatever. I'm like, consistently explaining that we don't work on the behavior.
Yeah.
Like the majority of therapy, not obviously not everyone, is like, here's a worksheet, or here's how to stop that behavior. And it's all external. It's like an external locus of control. The majority of the world is living in a reactionary state instead of going inside to do what will actually make the real change. Like we spend so much time tinkering around outside to change a psychological internal problem that can be fixed.
Yeah.
Bothers me. But anyhow, so the thing that when you were talking about, like when you're thinking about those, I wanted to piggyback on what you just said about those hand-selected people that you chose in the system. And I can hear the pain in that, like having to choose one over another. But what's interesting? It reminds me of that, it's we've heard it a billion times, the story of the starfish on the beach. Like somebody passing it, there's 1,000 starfish and you're throwing, one at a time in, and the guy passing by says, what is it? You're not going to do anything. So, well, it matters to this one starfish, right? And I feel like the people that you worked with, that you chose, that has a exponential impact. And if more people just even right where head, heart, feet, where we are, if we just do it where we are, that's all we can do, right? That is the change, right? So it's like, yeah.
It's very true. So I have an intern, I have other therapists I work with, and I used to teach at Dominguez Hills. And that's what I was saying. It was like I paid my dues into trenches, right? The training I got in the trenches is the reason I am who I am today. And I always have to give that credit back to the people who trained me, not only staff, but really the clients.
100%.
Their resilience, their power, and experiences.
Yes.
That's what a real training is.
It is.
And so when I was teaching, I would tell these new students that were going to become therapists that you need to pay your dues, because it's going to be hard. The system's going to be difficult, but that's where you're going to learn the art of therapy. There's all these models, and each of them are valuable in their own way. But therapy is an art. Is the idea of how do you pull together all these different things and apply it when it's needed. It's not this, okay, follow this, follow this, follow this. It needs that right concept, person, environment. What is happening? What is needed right now? What do I need to do differently in this moment? It is really an art. And now, being that I think I still the bleeding heart, it helps me feel better, because what I do is that I work with people who are in a position of power. And by changing them, or no, I'm not changing them, by helping them change themselves, by helping them be the best version of themselves, it just trickles down. It's so amazing. I'm working with someone and they come and tell me about their staff, they come and tell me about their friend, they come and tell me about their spouse. And I can see the change in those people.
Yes, it's so true, isn't it? Like if we want to change our world, we just change ourselves. It's a fact. I see it like, that's one of the things I do just personally for myself, owning, different locations of so many employees, like, and having kids, whatever. I take the information externally as a message. Like when I see that, like, whatever, people are not doing well with me or whatever it is, I have to go in and say, what's happening with me? This is a message for me where I'm at today, because it really is true that what we're doing internally it's just trickling down everywhere. So what would you say to someone who, like right now, is really just struggling, and let's just say, for example, because I know that this is something that happens with people. They're repeatedly, let's say, in bad relationships or have addictions. We're both like drug and alcohol counselors, so we know that too. So it's like what would you say to someone who they learn and they look inward, but they keep finding themselves repeating? We see that even though they're getting to the heart, but then they go out and it's kind of habitual almost. What would you say to someone? Because I'm sure there's people listening who understand it, but they haven't been able to like apply it, you know?
So applying skills is one half of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
I think skills are there is the effect of drugs and alcohol on the brain. There's that dependency. All of that is true. But then there is the psychological underpinning of that addiction, right? And if we don't understand that, we can change our patterns. The skills habits is really a marriage of skills and understanding of the self. If we are repeating a pattern over and over again, the insight itself is not enough. I have clients that come to me and repeat the same thing, and they're like, well, I feel bad, I'm repeating the same thing. I'm like, no, that's not on you. It tells me that whatever I have offered hasn't hit the right spot yet.
Yes. I love that. I cannot stand, all right, I'm not really like a complainer or like I don't usually do this, but I'm like, I cannot stand that when I love that my clinicians are like, what am I not doing that this person is not getting this? I love that attitude. So cool. Like that's what I would be thinking. But like, there's a lot of people or friends that'll be like, listen, you haven't changed. You know, I can't help you anymore. I've actually heard therapists who will say that. Well, if you're not going to do what I tell you to do, I hate even saying it out loud, then, you know, I can't help you. Well, you obviously can't help them because you're not helping them. But am I being too harsh?
No. This is what I talk about. I say therapy, and I've said this to my own clients. I say therapy is like the shoe. You can have the most expensive shoe and the fit isn't right and it bothers you.
Yes.
You can have the least expensive shoe, but it is just the right fit. And I always talk about if you don't feel like what you need is not, you're not getting it from me, it's okay. Right? And I have maybe like 1% of clients that come to me that really are not ready for that in-depth work. Yeah. And we have to, you know, well, I try to explain it to them and I try to change my approaches as much as I can, but I always give them that option. The match is crucial, right? What I bring in has to be a good match for who you are and what you bring in. Mm-hmm. But more important than that is that honest conversation about this space we're creating between the two of us, where I step in with my knowledge and expertise, but you will step in with your knowledge and expertise as well. I always make sure to downplay, in a sense, my authority in the session.
Yes. Yeah.
To say what I have as a PhD, you have in another way.
Yes.
I would tell my clients, yes. No, you have a PhD in the streets and I have a PhD from a college.
Exactly.
We're equals. That equality allows the space for people to start to really do the work of, I can make mistakes. You can call me out and tell me, no, that is not what I'm thinking.
Yes, 100%.
Because then we can go back and I tell them, you know what? I have this blackboard next to me and you're giving me the pieces of the puzzle and I'm telling you the picture I'm seeing. If it's not the right picture, we'll clear this up and start over.
Yes.
The giving back the authority to the person allows them to feel safe.
Yeah.
To build that relationship. So if you don't mind, I'll tell you very quickly about my 4-phase model.
Oh, I want to hear it. Yes. I don't mind.
The first phase of this model is really building trust and connection, right? My story and my background does not mean you can trust me. You have to feel that sense of safety with me as a person. So the first step is really me proving to you in real life that I am one capable, competent, able, and willing.
Yep.
Trustworthy, really, to hold what you cannot hold. To keep you up when you feel like falling apart and to pull you back before you get lost in the past.
Yes.
Working on the past isn't to go there and review everything that is there. Mm-hmm. It's this titrating, and I forgot who said that. One of the trauma experts talked about titrating in and out of the therapy, in and out of the trauma memory. There we go.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to help you not get lost and re-traumatized.
Yes.
So that's the first step, establishing that trust. The next step is really uncovering what is underneath. That's where my formulation is going to come in. Really understanding what is it, why are you the way you are? What are the experiences that led to this? And the third step is then starting to change that internal working model, changing the patterns, the ideas, the defenses that are no longer appropriate. Mm-hmm. Acknowledging their existence, appreciating their value, respecting their presence, and in essence, putting them to rest. Mm-hmm. They're no longer necessary. Mm-hmm. Gaining their trust that now I can do this because of what you did for me back then. Mm-hmm. And finally is the thriving. Now that you have this freedom in your essence of who you are, and these changes are in the depth of the personality. They're not like going back, it stays. Now that you're this new person and has this new insight and relationship to the world, where do you take it? Mm-hmm. Who do you become? And there's a lot of times where Ruza steps in with the specific real life actions, plans. Like we have so many clients. I had a client I was working with like 2-3 years. And then we just kept, like he wanted to get a job and we just couldn't. And then Ruza steps in within 3 months, the guy has the best job.
Yes. Actionable steps, right? And yes, that's cool. I love it. Yeah. One of the things that I've always felt as a person in our role is that to the depth that I have personally developed is to the depth that I have been able to help others. And it's been interesting for me. And I don't mean it I mean it in a really positive way, that I've had a lot of different trauma and different things in my own life that I had the opportunity to work through and see that the pain was my greatest teacher, the greatest gift ever. The processing and going through it, right? So do you see, because I can tell like you're incredibly, I could tell you're amazing as a therapist. It's just so obvious to me. I mean, I just, you're a badass. Like, I just feel like you just, like you're great. So I would recommend you to anyone. Really. Yeah. And myself. It's just like, can you help me? No, but anyhow, so I definitely, want to say that. But besides, you're just everything, your philosophy and your way of doing it is just, it just resonates so much with everything I believe. So do you find that, and that's up to you if you want to say anything about your personal life, but have you found that working through your own stuff has been a catalyst for your excellence?
Well, I really appreciate you and your kind words, and I really admire what you do. And I feel like we're very much on the same page. So I appreciate knowing you.
Me too.
I always say that if you haven't gone through something, you wouldn't do this work and you wouldn't stay in it.
Yeah.
And this is the work. I tell students that in healing others, you're healing yourself.
Yes.
Ask yourself, why are you here? Mm-hmm. I can tell you that I'm here because very early on in my life, and there's a story if you want, I can tell you, I saw the impact of prejudice, discrimination, not believing in someone, and what it felt like. And that stayed with me throughout my whole life. It became my mission and statement in a way. To maybe that one of my clients says you have unwavering hope. Maybe that's where it came from. Do you want me to tell you that story?
Yes, I do. Tell us. Yes.
I was 7 years old. I was 8 years old. I was in second grade. And the first grade was okay, it wasn't great. The second grade, I had found a friend. And for whatever reason, I always found the people who were most traumatized as a child.
Me too.
Drove my parents very mad. They're like, why do you do this?
Me too.
So I was playing with this kid that nobody was playing with. Now reflecting back, she probably was abused because she was very aggressive in her play.
Yeah.
and very loner and like very quick to react. But there was something about her that, I felt safe with her. The craziest thing is I always feel safe with people who have had the most trauma. My poor mom, like, what did you go? I had a really good childhood reflectively. I mean, they did so much for me, but there was just this, maybe it was a past life. I don't know. I had this need to connect to those who were suffering.
Yeah.
So we were playing, and I was running ahead of her. No, I was running behind her, actually. That's why it matters. She was running in front of me. I was running behind her. There was this little, bump in the space where we were running, and I fell. Well, I fell right in front of our administrative building. I scratched my knee. I don't know why they cared so much. Everybody ran out. Are you okay? And by this time, my friend had turned around and arrived behind me. But I already was on the floor when she arrived. And all of a sudden, instantly, they turned to her and said, "Why did you push her?"
Oh my God.
And all these adults. And I'm like, no, no. I'm
Wow.
like very dynamic. Like she couldn't have. I was running behind her.
Wow.
Nobody hears me. Like I keep protesting and no one is hearing. And I look at her and you can see the weight of the world on her. Like you could see her come down. It was as if I was seeing her whole story. So they sent her away, they patched me up. I walk into the room and she's standing in the corner. There are all these kids standing around her and talking to her. And I think she was older than me. And I was just I could see her and I felt it in my bones. So I'm getting in front of her and I'm telling everybody, I swore that was not the story. Well, there's this dual sword, right? There's this idea that this person is not being treated fairly. And then this is idea that no matter how much I scream, I'm not heard.
Wow. Yeah, I
And
hear
if
you.
you notice, up to this point, up to my husband take over my business, that was my story at work.
Mm.
I always found people like her, and I screamed on their behalf and nobody heard.
Wow.
Bruce is like my, knight in shining armor since the day I met him. And once again, he showed up because I was burning the business to the ground. I was just working. I wasn't billing. I wasn't doing anything.
Burning the business to the ground. That's such a great explanation. That story is when you said it, and I felt my tears just fill in my eyes. It's just really just picturing that girl and and I love how you described how these two young girls are having these different experiences in the same scenario. And I hope that the listeners or the viewers are able to connect that to things in their own life. Like I would tell this story, I actually say it in my book about how I just made the story up, by the way, in the book, but about, it's just an example. Like a 4-year-old could be sitting at a table and they have a brand new toy. And the dad starts to yell at the mom about the toy. And then the child makes the distorted perspective is that playing is bad or having a new thing, whatever it is that, that they did it, right? Egocentric. So now he doesn't, or she doesn't know that the dad and the mom are having financial issues and the mom overspends or whatever the issues, it doesn't matter. But then this is carried, let's say now they're in the playground and now the child is playing with a toy. A little girl comes over and goes to grab the toy, which is not unusual, right? Goes to grab the toy and the mom of the child starts yelling at the girl. Now it's another catchment that can be attached to that same story, perspective of the experience, right? It's so incredible how we will play things out. I'm going to tell you this thing. Therapists tell all right here. Okay, I could go with this, but I grew up in a house that I was ashamed of my entire life. I lived in a really nice neighborhood, a well-off neighborhood. My dad had business. Like we were okay, but my parents were such hippies. The grass was high. Like the house was unique, but to me, it was like everybody else had manicured lawns. Mine, I was humiliated about my house. First grade, I would have people whoever drove me home or whatever, I have them drop me off 4 blocks away at my uncle's house. And I would walk home because I didn't want anyone to see that. And that was the uncle who abused me, by the way, but they gave me dinner. So whatever. So I would go to, and then I would walk home. No one would know. So, but what I just recently did, which I thought was fun and cool, and it was just like a moment that I decided, because I've done work on this like lots of times, but every house I could live in I've lived in such beautiful houses. I've always felt ashamed of my house, no matter what house I lived in. And it was like this, like, oh my God, am I ever going to get rid of this? So you know what I did the other day? You're going to think this is funny. Not in therapy, did it myself. I'm in my house. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back to my childhood home. And I went back. We do this with clients all the time. So I went back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to remodel that fudger. I'm going to remodel that shit. And I went in. And because I've done that, my husband, we would remodel things, whatever. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this the most beautiful house that could ever be. Now, that's an external thing, but in an internal world. So it's like this kind of, because I've done the internal shame thing, but this was like, you know what? And I blew out the kitchen in my mind. I put everything that I would love and just all these different things. Now, how much did that impact me? Maybe not as much, but it was like an act of like proactively like taking charge as an adult of a memory, because our whole body is just a record of memory, right? We have so much memory, stored all over the place, right? So I don't know. Tell me, you want to say something. I know you do, because listen, I know that this is not like because this was just like me just playing around. It's not even like therapy, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So tell me.
Imagine that child there on that lawn.
Yeah.
As you stand there.
Yeah.
And you tell her how you will remodel this house for her.
Yeah.
The moment, the feeling you're talking about is that your power was taken because you weren't accepted by others.
Yeah.
By stepping in and be better than others in that sense. Not that we're better than anybody else, but when you are pushed to the point of you're not good enough, you're not like us, then you need to counteract that with I can be better than what you think you are.
Yeah.
And your act of showing up to remodel that place to your standards is as if to give that child, not only you're unique, you're also very capable. What they doubt you on is what they don't know about you.
You know what I loved? I loved being there in the house with her and like doing all the things that she would dream of, like just like it just felt so nice, like caring for her, like a mommy, like reparenting, just such a nice, it was the experience itself was just nice. It was empowering. And then the act of, I've had really beautiful homes, right? So, and my house now, I will walk around and go, thank you, this is beautiful. And I will have to shift my vantage point from the mind of that little girl, because you can see everything wrong, to really seeing the beauty there,
Just wants to be accepted.
Yep. That's all right. Isn't that everything?
Maybe if you literally transform the house, you can throw a party with your childhood friends.
Oh, yeah. That's another whole thing over there, right?
Her power was taken because others had something she didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's so much to what's inside of us. And I just want to say to like listeners that we have such an opportunity. I always say, like, my favorite quote, this is one of my favorite quotes, is by Alvin Toffler. He says, "The illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and learn again." And it is so profound, because that is really what we're talking about. It's like whatever we learned that is, or the defense mechanisms or whatever that we needed that were developed over time, that unlearning them and learning again, this is what you do, this is what we do, right? And I just want to, anyone who's out there who's just struggling or having a hard day, understand that underneath all of that, there is so much hope. There's like, I can forecast for you like greatness. And I know you feel the same way, right? Like, it's just incredible what you actually can do with the right help and with the right perspective on changing your life. And we want to tell you that there's so much hope. What would you want to tell anybody out there?
That they're not alone.
I love that. Yep.
Nobody deserves to be alone. No matter what you were told, you were born with worth that can never be taken away.
Yes.
We always value newborns. They are born with worth. So whatever happened after that point, whoever violated that sanctity of the worth you once had, it's my job to help you refine it.
Yes.
And that no matter what, I mean, I've worked with people who have been in organized crime. I've worked with people who have killed people.
Yep, me too. Day in the life.
I'm not judging. We're going to work with those people.
And we love them very much.
We see the person behind it. You know, we see the person behind that moment.
Yes.
I always tell them, I'm like, this is yours to carry. I'm not going to judge you because it's your burden for the rest of your life. You have this unspeakable burden. So there's nothing that someone can say that is we're not going to be able to find empathy for.
Yes, it's true. You know what you know how I think of it? I think of it like, you know how like when we show up and we're really in our best self, like we feel confident, we're generous, we just love. When we're filled with love, we feel good about ourselves, we just love others. But when we're in our, our worst self, whatever that is, that's when that's when we're irritable or mean or, any of the things that we could do that could hurt someone else. But people misinterpret when somebody shows up in their worst place, that's the real them. That's not true. The real us is the loving soul, the one who really wants to give and love. Whenever somebody does something that's really not right, it's really like that broken part. It's just a defense. It's fear, and we're so busy looking at behavior instead of getting to underneath. Like I see like people, even in school systems, like with kids, like they want to just stop the behavior. But I say like, well, why don't we get to what is causing the behavior so that they can actually be better? It may take a little more time and the behaviors are still going, but can you give me a little time so that they can love themselves so that then they show up better, right? So
it goes back to that inner child, that vulnerable, reactive, in pain is really the child you once were.
Yes.
Right?
I could talk to you like forever because I'm like about to say another thing and I'm holding it back and I have tears behind my eyes. I'm going to go, that's the protector self. I was in like some meeting once and somebody was like so defensive and I'm like, I know right now that you know me and you're like really in your protector self right now. I know you are. And they just started to cry. They're like, yes, because it's like, see beyond the stuff, right? You're such a good soul.
Oh, as you are. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you so much. I'm so glad that I just, we were strangers. Now I feel like we're friends. I know. And I feel like, if you honestly need anything or whatever, I mean, I know you're doing great, whatever, but if there's any way that, we're going to just share about you, promote you, we'll say all your stuff in the show notes, but we make reels and all of that stuff. But is there a place where people could find you that's important to you? Yeah.
So definitely our website, heal-thrive.com. We are Heal and Thrive Psychotherapy and Coaching because there's a Heal and Thrive business that's something different. We are Heal and Thrive Psychotherapy and Coaching. We have Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I think that's it, right? We have all of the social medias.
Awesome.
You can find the links of them on our website, heal-thrive.com. Find us on social media under Heal-Thrive PC. or just put in heel and track psychotherapy and coaching. I think that's
It'll
easy.
come up. Yes.
We do offer free consultation. We do have ADHD coaching and a really different perspective on ADHD because we see that as a gift. My husband has it, my daughter has it. We really think my husband was diagnosed as an adult, and that's when he went to his coaching. My husband was he has 2 MBAs. He was in the business world for a long time, and then he found his love for coaching, and he became an ADHD coach. So it's really about transforming your lives in any stage that you are, whether you're a child, you're an adult. And I personally work with adults and couples, really people who are ready, like they've done whatever they can to this point, and they've reached that point of, okay, it's not doing anything for me. They're not doing anything for me. You're ready to work with me to get to that high, next level. Yes. But we do have therapists for any stage. So feel free to reach out.
I love it. And what you mentioned about your husband with ADD, ADHD, it is such a plague. And I do believe also it is a tremendous gift. So many, I'm in all these entrepreneurial groups like Arate and 365 Driven and whatever. And like so many people have, are diagnosed this, but it's really this incredible drive. Like it's also being a visionary. And sometimes we need an integrator to help us. Like we're casting our vision and we need somebody to like give us bumpers, so I really, I think that's fascinating and wonderful. So I just want to thank you. I can't, in these videos, I can't tell if I'm looking at you or not. I'm looking all over because when I look at you, it looks like I'm looking the other way in the screen. So anyhow, people, if it looks like I'm looking away, I'm not disinterested. I'm actually looking at her. I just can't find her I have to look at her this way. Okay. So anyhow, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I've said it before and thank you. That's it. It's an honor to know you.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to know you. I really enjoyed our conversation and I honestly look forward to continuing talking to you.
You betcha, sweet Bippy. Okay. It's a wrap. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. I just want to say to you that we are all together a part of the Mission Awake, a mission that's going to stop the mediocrity that's plaguing all of us. So if you got something here today, I ask that you would be a part of this mission and you'd share it with whoever you can. Take a screenshot of the show and share it on your Instagram. If you are looking for me, you can find me on social media platform Instagram, Alison Answers, or Lager Counseling Services. And give us a review and subscribe if you could to YouTube, Alison Answers. That's where you're going to get a lot of content. I drop stuff every day, goofy stuff, all different kinds of stuff. 5-minute videos that just get you moving in your day. Have a great week. See you next time.